Introduction to the Monster Tea Party. On the recliner, Xiao Xiao rested his hand half on his forehead, his eyes half open and half closed. The branches above are crisscrossing, blocking the overly bright sunlight. The white plum is transparent, with a cold and refreshing fragrance. A piece of plain sleeve hangs down. On the other side of the yard, there are chirps and whimpering on the wutong trees. Occasionally, there was a mix of giggling sounds, like the laughter of a child, but inexplicably eerie. The soft touch on his face made him smile, and in a daze, he thought. Unconsciously, the yard was already so lively. We can have a tea party now. Chapter 1. Mencius Mountain. You are listening at novel-full.audio. Smile, hurry up. Zhang Bo waved his arm and shouted towards the back. Although Zhang Bo's name is refined, he is actually a burly man with a tiger back and a bare waist. Despite his strong physique, he exudes a touch of fresh emotions. This time, he invited his college roommates to visit his hometown of Sichuan during the National Day holiday. Now, they are climbing Mount Mencius. Mengzi Mountain is densely populated with scenic spots and has a long history. According to the inscription on the mountain, it is recorded that there are magnificent palaces and buildings on the mountain, and there are those with pavilions, towers, corridors, and halls. There are 2 pillars in the southern hall, 1 ear room, and 2 cabinet rooms. The open space in front of the temple was converted into a huge hall, and a portrait was set up to list it with other halls, which is beneficial for the officials to pay their respects and show their caution. In the past, Mount Mencius was filled with incense, attracting a constant stream of visitors and worshippers. The scene was lively and extraordinary. Although Mount Mencius today is not as beautiful as before, you can still see some of its former charm during holidays. The boy who fell behind looked expressionlessly at Zhang Bo, his gaze sharp, until Zhang Bo's overly relaxed eyebrows and eyes began to stiffen and twitch before slowly speaking, "My name is Xiao Xiao." The first sound. Isn't it just a smile? Zhang Bo muttered, but his voice was so loud that there were echoes on the quiet mountain path. All right, mistress, as you know, the boss is a typical representative of limbs and minds, so don't argue with him. Zhuge Yun, with a somewhat friendly attitude, put his arm around Xiao Xiao's shoulder and frowned and said. Xiao Xiao felt a twitch in his temples and shook his shoulders without hesitation. He shook off Zhuge Yun's hand, which was close to him, and then said with a smirk, "Second, call me third or your name. Then don't call me a waiter either." Who started shouting? Zhao Luzheng, as the youngest, sighed with a hint of melancholy as he looked at the childish and unpretentious guys ahead. Immediately looking up around, the mountain path was rugged, with trees blocking the sky, and even sunlight was filtered out sparsely. There was a hint of coolness in the air. In theory, this should be a comfortable temperature in hot and dry temperatures, but due to excessive quietness, people couldn't help but feel a bit anxious. Don't make a fuss. Boss, where is this? Do you still know the way? Zhao Luzheng walked a few steps quickly and came to Zhang Bo's side. They originally came to Mengzi Mountain for sightseeing, but unfortunately, there were too many tourists and they couldn't bear to be crowded with them. In addition, Zhang Bo patted his chest and said that this was his territory. He had a clear door, so they went wherever there were fewer people. In the end, they ended up in such a remote place. Yeah, why isn't there anyone here? Zhuge Yun pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose, feeling a bit puzzled. Although they are from different places with fewer people, there is really no place without people in the scenic area. Although Zhang Bo grew up on this land, he is not a native and cannot distinguish all the paths in the mountains. Now this place is also very unfamiliar to him, and he couldn't help but scratch his head. Why don't we go back? We can always get out. The other 3 rolled their eyes at him, he's such an unreliable guy. Zhang Bo smiled awkwardly and said, let's go back and treat you to a big meal. Looking at the watch, it's almost 11 o'clock. They arrived at Mencius Mountain at 8 o'clock, and it's been almost 3 hours without realizing it. They're really a bit hungry. Xiao Xiao fell to the end, feeling that something was wrong, but he couldn't grasp the key for a moment. In the end, he could only shake his head, ignoring a bit of strangeness in his heart. Third, keep up. Here we go. Ideas are beautiful, but reality is cruel. After walking for a while, they found that they had completely lost their way. It's already difficult to find the way in the mountains, and the surrounding scenery is similar. Apart from trees, who remembers the direction when you came? Xiao Xiao and the others were really a bit anxious at this moment. This is in the mountains, and there is no signal. If they were really trapped here, it wouldn't be a joke. Boss, we are really hurt by you. It's still a local villain. Zhuge Yun rudely roast, and beat his weak legs. After all, after a morning of hiking, coupled with the psychological factors behind, he felt more tired. Boss, what should we do now? Zhao Lu was leaning against the tree, feeling a bit impatient. Let me take a look, let me take a look. Zhang Bo's heart was even more tormented. Everyone had already believed him, which led him to such an awkward situation. Besides, he was also born and raised here, and it should be easier for him to find a way out than them. Boss, don't worry, Xiao Xiao patted the boss's shoulder. Let's take a break first. Xiao Xiao was a bit obsessed with cleanliness, so he didn't find a tree to lean against. He just stood and slowly calmed down his somewhat rapid breathing. Suddenly, he lifted his head, listened attentively, and walked around again. Third, what are you doing? Zhuge Yun couldn't help but ask as he looked at Xiao Xiao's strange behavior. Others also looked with questioning eyes. Xiao Xiao ignored them, and after circling around a few times, he finally spoke up. I used to think there was something strange, but I couldn't figure it out. Now I finally know. Strange place. What is it? What strange place is it? Don't you think it's too quiet here? Xiao Xiao didn't show any interest and directly revealed his discovery. Oh, why do I think it's normal for the mountains to be quiet? Zhuge An said, somewhat disappointed, thinking there might be some strange mountain talk, which made him look forward to it for nothing. Indeed, it's normal for the mountains to be quiet, but listen, there's not even the sound of birds or anything here. Don't you think it's strange? Xiao Xiao frowned. In theory, there may not be such dangerous creatures as wild animals in these pristine mountains and forests. After all, this place has already been designated as a scenic area, and the personal safety of tourists needs to be guaranteed. However, there should always be wild birds and so on, right? However, he had carefully listened to it, not to mention the chirping of birds, not even the chirping of insects. The entire mountain forest was simply quiet and eerie. Upon hearing Xiao Xiao's words, other people had some recollection. Yes, they didn't pay attention before, but now they realized that the surroundings are so quiet that they can even hear their rough breathing clearly. They couldn't help but feel a chill in their backs. Hee, have all the birds been hunted down by the hunters? Zhuge Yun chuckled dryly. No one paid attention to him. The atmosphere became somewhat solemn. Let's go. Xiao Xiao took the lead and waited for death, which was always of no use. Perhaps everything was just his unfounded worries. Perhaps as they walked, they could see other tourists. The other few people also quickly followed suit. Instead of staying here to scare themselves, it's better to walk around. Maybe the willows will turn dark and the flowers will turn bright. Along the way, Xiao Xiao and his companions could only hear the muffled sound of themselves stepping on the dirt, as well as the occasional rustling of fallen leaves. The trees covered the sky and the sun, and the shadows were heavy, giving them the illusion of being swallowed up. I couldn't help but feel their footsteps getting faster and their faces turning a bit pale. Wait a moment. The sudden sound made the front few people almost stumble. Third, you're going to scare people to death. My heart almost stopped. Do you know that people scare people to death? Faced with the unanimous condemnation of the three, Xiao Xiao was somewhat speechless and asked the Qinyuan website www.xiaoxiuan.com for help. Especially the boss, is he so big and white? So easily scared? I'm sorry, I didn't know you were so timid. Xiao Xiao saw that the three of them were going to explode again and quickly got to the point. Look, there seems to be a water source over there. Compared to the three of them burying their heads and rushing forward, Xiao Xiao still occasionally pays attention to the surroundings. So naturally, he caught the reflection from the corner of his eye, as the trees obscured him and it was unclear what it was. But in short, it should be the water source. Ah, really? Go and take a look. It's just a river. Many people know that if they get lost in the mountains and forests, if they can find a river, then going downstream is the best way to survive. So now, Zhang Bo and his companions simply ran up, pushed aside the bushes, their faces full of excitement but stiffened after seeing what was in front of them, and suddenly disappeared. What's going on? It turns out to be a lake. It's really a waste of joy. Xiao Xiao followed suit and it was indeed a vast lake. The water surface is calm and clear, with a reflection of sky light and clouds. Ah, what clean water, but why isn't there a single fish? Really, is this stagnant water? But there's no strange smell. Zhang Bo and others were discussing extensively. Although they were disappointed that they did not find a river, they saw too many identical trees and suddenly saw a pool of clear water. There was still a bright feeling in front of them, as if their anxious and tense hearts had eased a bit. Isn't there a fish? Xiao Xiao felt a refreshing sensation as he smelled the refreshing water vapor. When he looked down, he found black shadows swaying and shuttling under the water, which was quite noticeable. He couldn't help but wonder. Chapter 2. Strange Creatures. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Where is there? Zhang Bo and others immediately rubbed against Xiao Xiao's side, stretched their necks, opened their eyes wide, and almost plunged their heads into the water. They looked left and right, but found nothing. Third, are you playing with people? That's right, where did the fish come from? I didn't even see a shrimp fry. Third brother, did you read it wrong? No, it's just here and there, isn't there a lot of fish? Xiao Xiao instinctively retorted. The water quality of this lake is clear, and the dim bottom of the water is faintly visible, with black shadows clearly visible. Isn't this just a fish? Xiao Xiao took a few more steps forward and carefully examined. Isn't there so many? Carp. The voice became lighter and lighter, and Xiao Xiao couldn't help but rub his eyes with his hand. At this moment, a faint light shone into the lake, and the black figure gradually appeared. The body is spindle-shaped, with the mouth positioned downwards, and there is a pair of snout and jaw whiskers. The gill rakes are short and the abdomen is relatively round. The scales are large and round. The side line is obvious and slightly curved. The tail fin is deeply forked. The color was a rare vermilion, and the shimmering waves made him feel dizzy. Xiao Xiao forcefully closed his eyes and then opened them again. Yes, they were still there. At first glance, these fish may not look much different from red carp, but with a mustache, which red carp has a bird's tail and 6 legs. Xiao Xiao is a bit confused. Is it because he is ignorant and ignorant? In fact, there is such a fish. However, Xiao Xiao turned his head to look at the other 3 people and said, Are there really no fish here? Yes, third brother, what's wrong with you? Third, why don't you take a break? Third brother, come and sit here for a while. Xiao Xiao ignored it and stared at the fish in the lake, only to suddenly bump into the eyes of one of the fish. His agile and even slightly cunning gaze was completely different from that of a fish, and his big mouth was grinning, right? Cluck. The sound that seemed to be ringing in one's ear, tapping on the eardrum, was as childish as a baby, yet extremely strange. This is it laughter. Xiao Xiao instinctively took a big step back. All of this eerie made him take a cold breath. Xiao Xiao quickly turned his gaze away and reached out to rub his ears. His face was a bit pale, and he moved away from the lake under the questioning and concerned gaze of Zhang Bo and others. Looking back, the originally clear and peaceful blue water suddenly became eerie and eerie for no reason. Half bright and half obscure, a fish grinning and laughing suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Xiao's eyes, full of excitement. Under the urging of Xiao Xiao, they quickly left the lake. Afterwards, perhaps luck had turned around and they quickly found a way out, encountering other tourists. "Huh," I said, "follow me, it's definitely right. Isn't it that you're coming out now?" Zhang Bo was quite proud. Fortunately, who was so nervous before? "That's right, big brother. Lucky this time, next time." Xiao Xiao fell last, feeling a bit dazed. He doesn't understand, are those fish his hallucinations? Or is it real? If it were an illusion, the strange laughter seemed to still echo in his ears, stirring his mind restless. If it's true, why can't even Big Brother and them see it? Third, what are you dragging around for? Here we go. Forget it, Xiao Xiao shook his head. Since he couldn't figure it out, don't think about it anymore. Anyway, he has left now. He thinks he will never go there again in the future. Cluck, some humans have seen us. Really, he seems to be scared by us, Cluck. Really, Cluck, it's been a long time since I met anyone who could see us. The next few days of sightseeing went smoothly, and Zhang Bo led them to climb all the mountains around Sichuan. Although Xiao Xiao, Zhuge Yun, and Zhao Luzheng were complaining incessantly, Zhang Buzhen had a saying. On such a hot day, we need to go to the mountains to cool off. He also disdained the three of them for their weak physique and corresponding unattractive physical strength, and was determined to help them exercise well. Finally, he asked a lewd question. Can't you guys? Xiao Xiao and others were speechless about this. Okay, it's not possible now. A man's face cannot be lost. But if you die, you have to face the consequences. When they finally returned to school, they all lay on the bed, packing their bodies and unable to move. It's really back pain and soreness. Even in the face of Zhang Bo's sarcasm, they don't have the energy to deal with it. Xiao Xiao twisted his body, even though it had been several days, there was still some sourness lingering in his limbs, which was unpleasant. Just as he was moving his body slightly, his eyes inadvertently swept over a spot and suddenly paused. What is this? Because the speed was too fast, he could only see a long tail that quickly disappeared at the corner of the hallway. But no matter what it is unbelievable that it appears in the teaching buildings of universities. And he looked up at the surroundings. The hallway was bustling with people coming and going, but their expressions were normal, as if no one had noticed a strange creature running past them just now. Xiao Xiao felt his heart beating a bit fast and he also had a headache. Is this his hallucination? Or can only he see it? If it's the latter, to be honest, he doesn't like this uniqueness at all. Forget it, he didn't see anything. He took a deep breath while deceiving himself and others. But I am already thinking about whether to find a time to go to the temple to pay respects and see if I have been contaminated with anything dirty. At this moment, Xiao Xiao did not pay too much attention, after all, it was just a small anomaly. It did not pose a threat to his own life's safety, nor did it have any impact on his life. Just treat it as an illusion between light and shadow. Xiao Xiao happily put these abnormalities aside. But he never imagined that in his future life, he had already experienced great deviations without realizing it, and these abnormalities, whether he wanted them or not, had become the main melody of his future life. And one day, he will be very calm and indifferent to these strange creatures. Originally, Xiao Xiao had almost forgotten about the unknown creature with a long tail, but on that day, while searching for books in the library, he caught the fleeting figure through the gap between the books and the bookshelf. Xiao Xiao was stunned, but he caught up without even thinking about it. The 8th floor of the library is the second library of social sciences, and there have never been many people. As noon approached, it was even quieter, and the sound of sneakers rubbing against the ground could be clearly heard. Xiao Xiao only had that tail in his eyes, following strange creatures circling around the bookshelves. Although the other party was running very fast, they searched for the Qinyuan website www.xiaoxiuan.com. However, every time Xiao Xiao felt like losing the other party's trace and wanted to give up, he revealed a little tail from somewhere, shaking and shaking. It had to be said that it was really frustrating, it was like playing tricks. Gasping for breath, Xiao Xiao stared at the tail intently, feeling already tortured by the top 10 in his heart. Finally, Xiao Xiao blocked the opponent in a triangular area. The dim light and flying dust made Xiao Xiao somewhat unable to see the figure in front of him clearly. In the narrow space, Xiao Xiao's breathing was rapid and distinct, with a hint of careful restraint. Xiao Xiao is somewhat proud. How about being caught up by him, right? But gradually froze in a clearer view. What is this? It looks like a mouse, but it has the head of a rabbit and the body of a deer. The erect pupils of animals are red like those of rabbits, but unlike their gentle nature, these beastly pupils are not only cold, but also exude an extremely humane arrogance and contempt. The small body exudes a powerful aura. Xiao Xiao faced his erect pupils, and the magnificent red color reflected a hazy luster, giving off a bloody beauty. Xiao Xiao couldn't help but feel a bit dazed. Just as he was feeling dizzy and stunned, he suddenly felt the sharp wind passing by with a sharp roar. There was a momentary tinnitus in his ears and a pain in his cheeks. There was a sticky substance slowly flowing out, and he quickly reached out and wiped it, crimson in his eyes. It was indeed bleeding. The sound of books falling echoed one after another, and when I turned around, there was a patch of air above the bookshelf in front of me. The ground below the empty space was littered with scattered books. Looking through the space on the bookshelf, there was nothing, everything seemed like a dream. But Xiao Xiao knew that all of this was true. Chapter 3. Notebooks and Mutations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. TSK, it hurts really. Xiao Xiao touched the wound on his face and grinned, which was not fake. Xiao Xiao was in a daze, his gaze fixed, and the vast reading room remained silent. In the distance, faint voices could be heard, and Xiao Xiao was suddenly awakened with a sense of returning to reality. He shook his head vigorously, trying to clear himself up a bit, unwilling to think too much. Xiao Xiao took a few steps forward, crouched down to tidy up the books that had fallen on the ground. His hand reached out halfway, but it stopped. His fingers were still stained with the bloodstain he had just touched on his face. Xiao Xiao frowned, and there was nothing to wipe on him. He changed his left hand and picked up the books on the ground one by one. Xiao Xiao looked at the notebook he had just picked up casually. Notebook. How could there be a laptop here? Who left it, right? Xiao Xiao took a look and, it was just an ordinary black notebook with some dust on it, perhaps someone accidentally stuffed it with a book, right? Xiao Xiao guessed that he wanted to put it on the bookshelf like his previous book, but he always felt a bit uneasy. Although it was just an ordinary notebook that could be seen everywhere, he inexplicably cared about it. Xiao Xiao held the book and instinctively rubbed it with his fingers. Suddenly, he felt a bit ridiculous and opened it to take a look, but for some reason, his heart was filled with excitement. Xiao Xiao put the book on the bookshelf, swallowed his saliva, and with a bit of awkwardness, opened the notebook with his left hand. Hey! A blank space. After roughly flipping through it, the whole book is like this, it is a new notebook that has not been used before. Xiao Xiao was a bit stunned, and then a little amused, nervous about his previous blindness. Do you think there might be anything unusual? Mainly due to his recent experiences, he has become somewhat neurotic and disoriented. Oh, it's not a novel. When Xiao Xiao wanted to close his notebook, he suddenly caught a hint of color at the corner of his eye. He quickly flipped over to the page, and in a hurry, his finger was cut by the sharp paper, causing blood to seep out. Before Xiao Xiao could react, it had already dripped onto the slightly yellowish paper. Oh, my goodness! Xiao Xiao couldn't help but let out a low cry, frantically rubbing his right hand's blood against the paper. Xiao Xiao looked at his own hands and gave up trying to save them. But as he accepted the fact and looked helplessly at the notebook, there was a moment of doubt. The paper on the notebook, which exuded an old aura, remained as empty as ever. Without any trace of blood. What's going on? Did blood stick to the paper? Xiao Xiao doubted whether he was feeling dizzy, and his eyes widened as he scrutinized the notebook in front of him. Huh. Xiao Xiao rubbed his eyes. Did he really feel dizzy? How can you see patterns on paper that are faintly visible? Xiao Xiao got a little closer. There is really a pattern. The lines on the yellowed paper are gradually becoming clear, with vermilion seeping out. This is not. Xiao Xiao widened his eyes slightly, and a fish with a strange shape appeared in his pupils. It is shaped like a carp, and has a six-legged bird tail. Unlike paper that exudes an old-fashioned aura, the bright cinnabar seems to have vitality, flowing slowly on the paper. Xiao Xiao felt as if he had heard the sound of water splashing, a bright color coming to life. He casually met the other person's eyes, with a strange smile and a hint of cunning and innocent malice. Suddenly regaining consciousness, the quiet room could only hear the sound of rapid breathing. What's going on? Xiao Xiao felt a chill in his spine. Is this a monster? Is that also the one just now? Unlike ordinary appearances, the overly humanized expression and demeanor, as well as its elusive movements, all exude a hint of eerie aura. Xiao Xiao flipped through a page of paper, and the yellowed blank paper gradually revealed a shadow under Xiao Xiao's burning gaze. The pattern is becoming clearer. This is the monster just now. It looks like a mouse, with a rabbit head and a deer body. A pair of crimson erect pupils were cold and haughty, and the tense limbs seemed to be able to jump up at any moment, giving the opponent a fatal blow. He seemed to be able to hear the deep threat emanating from the other person's throat. My small body can emit such a heavy and violent roar. Xiao Xiao still remembers the dizziness at that time. Until the piercing pain on his cheek awakened his consciousness. At this point, he could no longer deceive himself with jokes like watching a dazzling eye. What really happened to him? He had a premonition that his life might not be as smooth and peaceful as he initially thought. Xiao Xiao felt a bit confused and scared, his head twitching in pain, but deep inside, in the hidden corners, what emotions were brewing and clamoring, whether it was anticipation or excitement. He searched through the entire notebook, but only these two designs were available. He flipped back through these 2 pages of paper again and found ancient and unfamiliar handwriting on the edge of the picture. Although it was his first time seeing the text, he inexplicably understood it. He couldn't help but murmur softly, "The little fish. The ear mouse. Is this the name of the monster?" He pondered for a long time and had some thoughts. The content presented in this notebook should be mainly about him. He had only seen these 2 types of monsters, so this notebook only presented these 2 types of monsters. However, what is this? Do you want him to go and subdue demons? Well, he is an ordinary person. He demanded a golden finger. However, these monsters don't seem to be as detestable as they are described in the storybook. Is it because he's lucky enough to encounter them all? Xiao Xiao touched his chin and, friendly monsters. Should it be considered friendly? Xiao Xiao hesitated for a moment and thought about the eerie laughter of the fish, as well as the fierce low roar and shiny teeth of the ear mouse just now. At least it didn't hurt him, did it? Classmate, why did you drop all the books to the ground? The librarian who appeared at some point frowned and looked at Xiao Xiao with a condemnatory expression. air, Xiao Xiao was shocked and suddenly regained his consciousness. His heart was palpitating in a flash. Ho, he almost suffered from myocardial infarction. After looking at the scattered books, Xiao Xiao glanced at the librarian at the book garden www.xiaoxiuan.com, whose angry expression was faintly visible. He touched his rapidly beating heart and could only sneer, "I'm sorry, teacher, I didn't mean to, I picked it up right away." "Classmate, books need to be taken good care of. This is the library, not you alone." The administrator saw Xiao Xiao's good attitude, his face relaxed, but he still stood on the side watching Xiao Xiao tidy up, his mouth not stopping. Xiao Xiao really wanted to break down that ear rat in 8 pieces. It was clearly his fault, but unfortunately it was him. Xiao Xiao quickly picked up all the books one by one, arranged them in their original state, and repeatedly promised not to make any more mistakes before finally escaping. With this manipulation, Xiao Xiao's originally chaotic mood has become somewhat calm. He has always been a person who takes things easy, and since things have happened, he won't get into any trouble. Moreover, so far, he can only see monsters and hasn't suffered any harm. Well, he didn't suffer much harm. He reached out to touch the scar on his face, but his footsteps stopped abruptly with a strange expression on his face. He then walked quickly to the nearest window until his nose could touch the cold glass before stopping. Xiao Xiao's heart was pounding fiercely, and the window was very clean, clearly reflecting his face that was too close. He reached out and touched the injured area, wiping away the remaining blood stains. That's where it was. Previously, a cut was made, but at this moment, there were no scars on the reflected face. The sensation under his fingers was also smooth and even, and the wound he had previously cut by Li Feng seemed to be just his hallucination. Xiao Xiao couldn't help but tug at his cheek, causing him to grit his teeth in pain. Did his body undergo any changes after seeing the monsters? Is this his pace to become superhero? Chapter 4. Testing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xiao Xiao was lost in thought for a moment, staring blankly at his face on the window, as if he had thought a lot, but it seemed like he was just daydreaming. Superman or something, is it really too unrealistic? Perhaps it was originally a small wound, and it's normal for it to heal quickly, right? Forget it, whether it's accidental or inevitable, just do a simple experiment. As he read this, Xiao Xiao's heart suddenly became restless. He clenched his fingers tightly around the black notebook and strode towards the elevator. Until he couldn't see the shadow of the library, Xiao Xiao breathed a big sigh of relief. Feeling the notebook in my hand, my mind settled down. Under the bright sunlight, Xiao Xiao suddenly noticed some changes in his notebook. The black cover has a unique texture, like gold, jade, and ancient sandalwood, with a thick and old charm. It vaguely resembles complex and eerie patterns, with a faint silver light shining through it. The silver light exudes a hint of blood, seemingly indicating an unknown. Xiao Xiao, who had been exercising for a while, was surprised by the mutation in his notebook and calmly accepted it. His body may have undergone a mutation, so what's so surprising about a laptop undergoing a mutation? Returning to the dormitory, no one else was present, just made it convenient for him. With a hint of caution, Xiao Xiao carefully placed the black notebook that now looked particularly tall and upscale. With a glance in his eyes, he saw the Swiss Army knife on the boss's table that had not been put away. He wiped the sharp blade and took a deep breath before finally setting his heart on it and cutting it off at his own finger. At first, he didn't dare to cut too deep, but immediately stopped when he saw the bleeding. It's really painful. It's just self-abuse. Xiao Xiao opened his eyes while roast, and stared at his fingers without blinking. There is a noticeable knife mark on the raised finger, and you can see the rolled skin and flesh, with blood slowly oozing out. Xiao Xiao took a tissue and wiped away the bloodstains on his finger, only to find that the finger that should have been injured was smooth and had no previous knife marks. Quickly, Xiao Xiao didn't even blink his eyes, but when he went to look again, his fingers had already healed. It seems that the knife has cut too shallow. With this attempt, Xiao Xiao has gained some confidence. The same finger almost cut off this time. He is also ruthless, impatient to try again and again, wanting to see where his limits lie. However, he looked at his bleeding fingers and felt a little flustered. He didn't intend to cut so deeply, he just didn't control the force well and cut too much. After all, he is a newcomer to cutting himself, and it is understandable that he is not familiar with the business, but it is himself who suffers. Xiao Xiao is about to cry without tears. What if his finger really breaks? Oh, it doesn't seem to hurt much anymore. His gaze was strangely fixed on his fingers. The moment before, he was still in a state of panic. He was too aggressive in his actions, afraid that his fingers would really break. What should he do? I didn't even dare to touch the wound, I just dared to close it in a virtual way to prevent my fingers from really obeying gravity and falling off. In the latter moment, I was surprised to find that the blood on my fingers had not increased at all, and my already shaky fingers were as good as before. He instinctively bent his fingers without any pain or discomfort. He leaned closer and rubbed his eyes vigorously. First, he cautiously lightly touched a piece of crimson fingers, and the next moment, he roughly rubbed his own fingers. Ha, it's really good. In this short minute without any time. The chaotic and tense heartbeat finally fell back to reality, then rose high again in the blink of an eye, and then fell heavily. Xiao Xiao felt a little dizzy. Xiao Xiao slowly wiped away the bloodstains on his hands with a tissue, and his fingers, which were supposed to have deep knife marks, returned to their original state. There was no obstruction or pain between their curves. The plot that should have happened in the novel actually happened to him, giving him a sense of dreaminess. With these two experiments, Xiao Xiao let go of his hands and feet, cutting back and forth on himself. He is not as invulnerable as some of the protagonists in novels. He only leaves a white mark on his skin, but has amazing resilience. If he is injured, he does not need treatment, and the wound will heal quickly without leaving any trace. Xiao Xiao couldn't help but wonder if he had been caught by aliens in his sleep to conduct an experiment. However, no matter what, at least for now, this is a good thing, it's like a pie in the sky. Xiao Xiao is somewhat complacent about his future, invincible, Xiaoqiang system. He did not measure the limit of his body's healing, after all, he did not have a tendency to self-harm. Cutting himself was already the maximum limit, and if he hurt himself further, he would not be able to take action. Moreover, in his opinion, this level of self-healing is sufficient. He is just an ordinary student, and he would not have suffered any serious harm unless he was really unlucky and had an accident caused by natural or man-made disasters. If that's the case, he can only consider himself unlucky. Oh, brother can also enjoy the treatment of the protagonist, and Xiao Xiao's mood is quite joyful. Xiao Xiao didn't think too much about the inexplicable changes in his body. He calmly accepted them and adapted well, after all, it was a good thing. But he wasn't overjoyed. After reading so many novels, he knew the consequences of exposing his uniqueness without any hesitation. He had no intention of being caught in the laboratory as a guinea pig. So, Xiao Xiao could only secretly rub and enjoy himself. However, as he walked through the familiar campus again, he would always occasionally look around, subconsciously searching for a monster named Ear Mouse, or other monsters. For so few days, just when he felt regretful that this little monster might have left the campus, he unexpectedly saw it again. It is under a big banyan tree, where the fine and fragmented sunlight shines gently through the lush branches and leaves, scattering a mottled and hazy atmosphere on the ground. The monster named Ear Mouse crouched down with its head held high, its strange appearance intertwined with light and shadow, creating a fleeting aura that almost made people think it was an illusion. Xiao Xiao widened his eyes, without blinking, afraid that the figure of this monster would disappear again. After hesitating for a moment, Xiao Xiao then looked around with a guilty conscience. Finally, he walked lightly down the tree. Monsters and the like, it's impossible to say that you don't have curiosity, right? Moreover, this monster looks small. Although it has a threatening aura, it should not be some ferocious and powerful monster, right? Xiao Xiao thought recklessly while cautiously approaching the monster. He was completely engrossed but forgot to conceal his expression, let alone the strange gaze that others had cast on him. After all, in the eyes of others, Xiao Xiao approached the empty tree with a cautious expression, which inevitably made people feel a bit absurd and funny, as well as a bit eerie. Xiaoxiuan.com. A few people couldn't help but stop and observe, looking up and down, left and right, and carefully. It was just an ordinary big banyan tree, and there was nothing under it. With a sigh, the strange person left, thinking it was another person with abnormal nerves. Many people lament that in recent years, there are really more and more mentally ill patients. But no one had much to do, just shook their head and hurried away. Anyway, patients with mental illness always have some infiltration. Xiao Xiao didn't know that he was already a mentally ill person in the eyes of others, and his whole mind was focused on the approaching monster. When he was only 3 steps away from the monster turned its head and its crimson eyes were cold and fierce, as if 2 sharp swords were piercing through the air. Suddenly, Xiao Xiao seemed to be able to hear the sound of the air being cut apart. Xiao Xiao instinctively narrowed his eyes slightly, feeling only a piercing pain in the center of his eyebrows, causing his nerves to tense and his hair to stand up. The monster stared at him for a moment, and he stiffened 3 steps away. The sunlight was scorching, and my slightly narrowed eyes felt a bit dazed. A strong wind swept past. Opening his eyes again, the monster was nowhere to be found. There is only the rustling sound of branches in my ears. Xiao Xiao felt a bit regretful, but also chuckled at his own performance. I have been searching for monsters intentionally or unintentionally these past few days, and when I saw them, my limbs became stiff with fear. Is this the so-called Yigong Haolong? It's just a little monster. I don't know if there will be a chance to see that kind of big monster in the legend of storytelling in the future. Under the warm sunshine, Xiao Xiao felt his previously cold limbs gradually warming up. Looking up, he saw a bright sky. Well, it's really nice weather. Chapter 5. Small Grove. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Wuya hesitated a bit as she wandered through the small forest, where she had first seen the little one. She didn't know what species the little one was, but girls were born with no resistance to cute and furry little things. Even though the little one was small and imposing, it only made her feel that the other person was proud and awkward. Despite her peculiar appearance, after the initial surprise and careful probing without being refused or harmed, Wuya inexplicably fell in love with the little one. She doesn't know if the little one is domesticated or wild. She only saw it by chance. When she returned from the library, it was already late and the moon was pale. In order to take a shortcut, she tried to ignore a few couples who kissed me, and hurriedly walked through the small forest towards the dormitory building. It was at that time that she saw the little one. In a daze, its silver-gray hair flowed out with a hazy clear glow. Despite being an ordinary forest, such magical creatures have emerged. Is this a mouse? Or a rabbit? Is it mixed race? Wuya was a bit uncertain and instinctively took a few steps forward. The sound of click stepping on the branches and leaves was so vivid in the quiet night that it made her heart skip a beat. Wuya looked back and saw that the strange creature had disappeared without a trace. Wuya ran forward and searched around, but found nothing. Did she feel dizzy just now? She didn't give up, and for the next few days, she would wander around the small forest intentionally or unintentionally, hoping to see that little guy again. It seems that I can always see this girl here these days, looking hesitant. Is she looking for something? Xiao Xiao had some doubts, but he didn't think much. It was just a bit strange to see too many. As he walked past the girl, he vaguely heard her talking to his companions. I saw it here last time, did I leave? It's possible, was it found and taken away by the owner? Forget it, besides, it looks like a mouse and a rabbit. How could there be such a creature? Yeah, was it too dark at the time? You read it wrong. I don't know. Silver, it's obvious. Did I really misread it? Xiao Xiao had a momentary pause. Silver. Like a mouse and a rabbit. Could it be an ear rat? Is there anyone else who can see it before? Xiao Xiao couldn't help but turn his head to look at the girl. She had playful short hair with a slight curl at the end, beautiful eyebrows and eyes, and a hint of confusion and unwillingness in her expression. The girl he didn't know, Xiao Xiao naturally glanced at her and then turned his head back, but he fell in love with her. In public elective courses, Xiao Xiao's gaze paused. It was the girl. Why, you're interested in that girl? Zhang Bo laughed a bit lewdly and bumped into Xiao Xiao. Hey, which one? The other few in the dormitory immediately approached, their necks stretched out as they looked around. No, Xiao Xiao calmly withdrew his gaze, without any embarrassment or shyness of being exposed to the affair. The other few people in the dormitory suddenly felt like they had been splashed with cold water, and they withdrew their gaze lazily. Hey, smile, don't be embarrassed. Those girls are not from our college, they should be from finance. She looks pretty good. Zhang Bo and his companions were somewhat unwilling, mainly because Xiao Xiao, who usually had a pure mind and few desires, was like a Taoist monk. Could it be that because his family owned a tea house, this kid's temperament had also been worn down like that of an elderly person? When you see a beautiful girl, just say, pretty, and that's it. It's simply unbearable. They are determined to turn Xiao Xiao onto the right path. Unfortunately, in the end, he only received a contemptuous look from Xiao Xiao and a lofty sentence. I'm not as greedy as some livestock. The result was that they ravaged this kid together. So, for girls who can catch Xiao Xiao's attention, they hold $1 million curiosity. But isn't there anything particularly beautiful? A few people looked at the girls and then accepted Xiao Xiao's answer. It seems like it's just a coincidence. Xiao Xiao had no idea what was going on in their hearts. Just seeing that girl again, I couldn't help but think of Ear Mouse again. My hand couldn't help but touch my cheek, as the previous sharp pain seemed to be still remembered. After class, Xiao Xiao had the idea of going to the library, perhaps hoping to see the Ear Mouse again. Only Zhao Luzheng responded to the call and went together. Zhang Bo and Zhuge and were all focused on going back to their dormitory to play games. The tree shadows are swaying, with mottled light and shadow. A touch of coolness and the fragrance of grass and trees. Xiao Xiao unexpectedly saw that girl again. Did she not give up yet? Xiao Xiao chuckled a bit, so persistent my gaze turned, but I couldn't help but pause. Under the tree behind the girl, a familiar figure caught her eye. That's just ear rats. Her bare satin fur was very eye-catching. The long tail hangs quietly behind. However, Xiao Xiao looked at the girl with a disappointed and disheartened expression on her face. Although she was very close, did she not see her? Isn't it supposed to be visible? Xiao Xiao was puzzled and somewhat disappointed. He thought he was a member of the same path, but it turned out to be nothing. What's wrong, second brother? Zhao Luzheng turned around and found Xiao Xiao standing behind, feeling a bit puzzled. It's okay. Xiao Xiao shook his head and finally glanced at the ear mouse, which happened to be in contact with those crimson eyes. He was surprised in his heart, but didn't show it on his face. He naturally withdrew his gaze and took a few quick steps to catch up with Zhao Luzheng. Monsters are very magical, but rather than giving him the special ability to see monsters, it would be more practical to tell him the winning number of the lottery. What's the use of only being able to see monsters? Or perhaps he could give him the ability to make monsters obey him. At least he can still make monsters scare people. He suddenly remembered the black notebook he had discovered earlier, and after studying it repeatedly for a long time, he couldn't help but wonder. Is this really just a picture book? Unfortunately, there is too little information and we can only temporarily put it aside. Since he saw the ear mouse in the small forest, Xiao Xiao calmed down and stopped trying to search for monsters in the library. As he was reading a book, suddenly, "Hey, have you heard?" Zhao Luzhen, who had returned to his seat, touched Xiao Xiao's arm and said, "Someone from the small forest is causing trouble." Little forest. Xiao Xiao replied with a questioning look. "I just heard what someone said." Zhao Levzing's expression was eager to share gossip. "I heard that a couple was scared by something last night. They are still lying in the hospital, shouting, 'I'm scared, I'm scared.' I don't know if it's true or not. If there were ghosts, I would really want to see them." Zhao Luzhen looked longingly. "Are you sure you won't also lie down at the hospital when the time comes?" Xiao Xiao was a bit teasing, but there was a bit of contemplation in his heart. "Are they injured? It seems like there were some scratches while running away. I'm not very sure about the specifics, but I know this couple was really scared and couldn't even speak when they were first discovered." "Is it an ear rat? But how could you be so scared?" From the girl's persistent search, it can be seen that ear mouse's appearance is still popular. Even if it has some strange shapes, it is not so scary. However, its gaze is somewhat penetrating. And look at him and that girl, they haven't suffered any harm, so, is it another monster? Speaking of which, how do you feel that since the return of Mencius Mountain, there have been more monsters? Xiao Xiao scratched his face and couldn't figure out what exactly caused him to open his yin and yang eyes. In the novel, the protagonist had to suffer some injuries or see some blood before opening the called Golden Finger. But it seems that he didn't buy anything at the stall, and he doesn't have any family heirloom in his hands. How could he just open it? Xiao Xiao carefully recalled his recent experiences and found nothing, so he no longer insisted, as he would always know when he should. The only fortunate thing is that what he saw with these yin-yang eyes was not ghosts, but monsters. At least in his opinion, monsters should be better than ghosts, right? Why does a strange sense of comfort arise naturally? Xiao Xiao was also speechless towards himself. Chapter 6. Bees. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In recent days, rumors of haunting in the small forest have been rampant, as several more victims have emerged. It is unclear whether the sun is too strong or for other reasons. The branches and leaves of the small forest have shown signs of extensive yellowing and withering. It made people even more anxious. Originally, no one believed much in the theory of ghosts and monsters, and even some curious individuals came to explore it with a hint of playfulness. But the situation has become increasingly serious. Big news. Big news. Zhuge Yun ran into the dormitory like a gust of wind, and the door behind him made a huge clang-clang sound. Xiao Xiao and others were all startled. Damn it, it startled me a lot. Zhuge Yun, what are you doing? Zhang Bo cursed as he was playing a game, completely focused. Suddenly, this one almost scared him out of his wits. Oh, my game. Zhao Luzhen immediately screamed out in agony. Xiao Xiao looked at his deceased figure and pressed his forehead, which had some veins exposed, with his hand. He almost succeeded. Zhuge Yun faced 3 strong murderous intent, his whole body stiffened, and he smiled foolishly. No, listen to me, something big happened in the small forest. When Zhuge Yun mentioned this, he immediately became energetic and began to gossip incessantly. Although there have been rumors of ghosts in Xiaoshilan these days, the students who touched ghosts were just scared. Although they were admitted to the hospital, it was not a big deal. Therefore, curious ghost seekers or those who didn't care have made Xiaoshilan popular. However, this morning, things changed. Look, it's all going crazy on the campus internet now. Qinyuan raised his phone and held it up in front of a few people. The big title has a somewhat shocking feeling. A female corpse appeared in the small forest. Drop down are several photos with high clarity. Damn it. At first glance, upon seeing the enlarged close-up of the photo with a face full of blue and purple and prominent eyes, the three old men couldn't help but gasp for breath. In the photo, even the blood twinkling on the white of the eyes was visible, with dilated pupils in a daze, terrifying, inexplicably eerie and terrifying. Cough, the pixels in this photo are also too high, aren't they? Xiao Xiao tilted his eyes and couldn't bear to look straight at them. Is this person still alive? Zhang Bo's gaze wandered a bit, and this picture looked a bit pitiful. I heard there was still one breath left. The guy who first discovered this girl thought she was dying without closing her eyes, that screamed so miserably. Qinyuan smacked his lips, then rolled his eyes with a hint of disdain, and a hint of resentment. Even the fourth one is fine, boss, you're so big and white-grown. You're so timid. Look at the third one, he's the real hero. Upon hearing this, everyone's gaze turned to realize that Xiao Xiao, who had been silent for a long time, was scrutinizing every photo with an academic research attitude, and a surge of admiration immediately arose. They all thought the third person was scared, so they remained silent. After all, although they have seen many bloody and terrifying scenes in movies and TV dramas, they are different after all. How can they be the same as what actually happened around them through the screen? The person who almost died is their classmate. Okay, third brother, I really didn't see it. Normally quiet, it turns out to be so fierce. This is not breaking out in silence, but deviating in silence. What a mess. Xiao Xiao rolled his eyes, but perhaps it was done by a monster, so he couldn't help but be tempted to see what clues could be seen in the photo. Otherwise, who would like such a horror movie-like photo? However, Guizhenguang did not gain anything from looking at the photos, so it seems that he still needs to find time to go to the small forest to take a look. Originally, this kind of thing had nothing to do with him. It was the responsibility of the police. He had always been self-aware and wouldn't just meddle in the fun, but suddenly he opened his yin and yang eyes. This matter was so strange that he couldn't let it go. Never mind, do your best in personnel. Maybe he can help a little. On the midday of the month, the already quiet small forest, due to the few accidents in recent days, is rarely visited. The intertwined branches exude a hint of eerie atmosphere. Ha ha, Wu Yi gasped for breath and looked up to see that it was a small forest, causing her heart to tremble. She came after the little one, searching for so many days, and due to frequent incidents in the grove, she was about to give up searching for this little one. However, she didn't expect to suddenly see it on the road again. She didn't have time to think about anything, and didn't even bother to shout to her companions before instinctively catching up. I didn't expect to end up in this small forest again. I don't know if it's due to psychological effects or really, but tonight's grove looks particularly eerie and terrifying, as if something is peeking at her in the dark depths. Wu Yi shivered all over and couldn't help but take a step back. She looked around and disappeared the silver figure. For a moment, the regret even suppressed her fear. Xiao Xiao. What's wrong, suddenly running so fast? Isn't this a small forest? Why did you come here? I don't know, are you still giving up? The words you said to my fellow pursuers seemed to break some kind of magic barrier, giving Wu Yi some peace of mind in an instant. Hey, don't you think it's very cold here? Let's leave quickly, it feels a bit rough. Well, let's go. Find Qinyuan www.zhaoxuyuan.com. Just as a few people were about to leave, Wu Yi finally turned around to take a look at the small forest and suddenly froze. What is this? What's wrong? What? Eyes. Red eyes, Wu Yi murmured. The little one also had red eyes, as if she had been bewitched. Step by step, gradually, her pace became faster and even ran straight away. Before her companions could react, her figure had disappeared behind the crisscrossing branches. Xiao Xiao. At this moment, Wu could no longer hear the cries of her companions. As she stepped into the small forest, she felt as if she had stepped into an independent small world, with everything outside isolated. Silence, the ultimate tranquility, even to the point of silence. Wu didn't feel anything, she just followed those red eyes. It's right ahead. Ah, we caught it. Tall trees with twisted branches, their originally lush green leaves have almost fallen off, and only a few leaves are withered and yellowed, seeming to shatter at a touch. So the creature standing on the branch is exceptionally eye-catching. Is this a bee? It looks very similar, but looking at this one that is dozens of times larger than an ordinary bee, Wu couldn't help but guess. How much growth hormone did it take to grow such a big one? Wu was stunned on the spot. It's not a little guy. The originally hazy red eyes suddenly approached her, and the too close distance allowed her to clearly see the overflowing coldness and malice. There is a foul smell of decay coming from the nose. Ah, Wu screamed and sat on the ground with a limp foot. The extreme sense of fear instantly captured her entire mind. Chapter 7. Crisis. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Wu trembled all over, his feet spasmodically kicking non-stop, desperately trying to step back. A huge bee, with its sharp tail needle shining with a cold luster, the crimson tip grew larger and larger in Wu's eyes, and the increasingly strong stench made her almost vomit, causing her stomach to turn upside down. Feeling uncomfortable, so uncomfortable. Nausea, so disgusting. Go away, don't come over. Wu was so scared that tears flowed down her face, but her hands and feet were powerless, like a fish thrown onto the shore, she could only struggle weakly. Is she going to die? The string that had collapsed to the extreme finally snapped with a clang. Wu's eyes darkened and she fainted. Bang! At the critical moment, Xiao Xiao, who happened to arrive, didn't think much and smashed the book in his hand fiercely. He didn't expect anything, just wanted to slightly hinder the monster's movement, but unexpectedly smashed the other person out completely. Xiao Xiao was momentarily confused. Quickly rushed to Wu's side, crouched down, and checked. Fortunately, he just passed out. Ah, the sharp and piercing sound, as if his nails were cutting glass, suddenly sounded. Xiao Xiao's hair stood up all over his body, and his eyes shook. There seemed to be a knife fiercely stirring his head, and his headache was splitting. Xiao Xiao finally managed to stabilize himself, but his eyes were still a blur. Although it appears to be an enlarged version of a bee on the outside, its call is different from the usual low buzzing sound of bees. It is so sharp and piercing, as if there is endless thick darkness spreading before our eyes, exuding an unknown blood color. Xiao Xiao suppressed his discomfort and slowly stood up, looking up. Perhaps it was the previous blow that made the monster somewhat wary and did not rush to launch another attack for a while. This gave Xiao Xiao some buffering time. He didn't even understand what was going on in the previous moment, and now he doesn't have any books in his hands. Xiao Xiaoli remained calm, his hands on his side stiff and even spasmodic, his veins bulging, and his fingertips white to the point of no blood. Bang 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 bang. Xiao Xiao clenched his fist, and the slight pain of his nails sinking into the flesh made him stare at the bee tightly, paying attention to its every move. Scarlet eyes shimmered with a cold and gloomy glow in the night. A huge figure stands on a high branch, with the crescent moon casting a pale blue light, outlining a thick shadow. A foul odor kept seeping into Xiao Xiao's nose. The smell of rotting, as if bones were settling in a swamp, mixed with a hint of slippery sweetness. It was cold and sticky, so disgusting that Xiao Xiao almost vomited it. Xiao Xiao didn't expect things to turn out like this. Even if he wanted to come and see the small forest, he would only choose the daytime. I didn't expect a change in the plan. That night, the boss was already frightened and generously invited the entire dormitory to go out and improve the food. When I came back, I happened to see a few girls wandering around outside the small grove with a panicked expression on their faces. The leader and a few others approached with a heart of pity for Fragrance and cherishing Jade. Upon inquiry, it turned out that one of their companions had run into the small forest without a trace, and they were not very daring to enter. You should know that the small forest is now like a forbidden area in the school, and the police blockade was only lifted in the afternoon. If it weren't for Wuya, they wouldn't have come here. And Wuya gang was a bit strange just now, they were both worried and afraid. While struggling to find help from the boys in the class or the security guards patrolling the school, encountering Xiao Xiao and the others immediately felt like a drowning person caught in a straw, pleading for their help in finding companions. Zhang Bo hesitated and looked at the gloomy and eerie small forest, but when he saw several faces that were about to cry, he immediately patted his chest and said it was up to them. Zhuge Yun and Zhao Luzheng clapped their chests one by one. Third, what are you fooling about? You're not afraid anymore, are you? Don't be afraid, my brother will protect you, Xiao Xiao didn't react, just fixed his gaze on the small forest. He didn't see it, but at this moment, a faint golden light flashed away in his eyes. In his field of vision, a faint black aura drifted above the small forest, spreading its teeth and claws, exuding an unsettling sense of stillness. This is, hey, third, why are you serious? What's wrong, is there anything wrong? You're not really afraid, are you? It's okay, Xiao Xiao withdrew his gaze. After entering, let's search separately. This way, it's faster. Okay. Originally, Xiao Xiao wanted to stop the boss and his team from entering, after all, the small forest now gave him a bad feeling. However, the reason is difficult to find, and he is also worried that the girl may be in danger if time goes on. The morning photos left a deep impression on him. Moreover, he had just noticed that the distribution of black air was uneven, and he had a premonition that the place with the strongest black air should be where the girl was located. Since that's the case, just let the boss and his team avoid that direction. As for what he would encounter if he was alone, to be honest, he didn't think too much about it. Of course, he is not someone who sacrifices himself for others, let alone someone he doesn't know. If he were the boss, they would naturally talk to each other. If it weren't for a mutation in his body, he would never have made this choice. This is just that currently, among the few people present, he is the most suitable person to go there. Finally, Xiao Xiao instructed several girls to go find the security guard before following the boss and them into the small forest. Zhaoxuiyuan.com. After entering, Xiao Xiao refused the proposal of working in pairs and chose the direction with the strongest black aura, heading alone. He lacks the confidence to protect another person. He has no intention of telling anyone his own secrets. The current situation, Xiao Xiao doesn't know if it's better or worse than expected. At least he can be intimidated by a monster who smashes a book, which is the best thing. He should really thank the classmate who asked him to bring the book back, otherwise he wouldn't know how to stop the monster from attacking the girl. But what should we do now? The monster, although somewhat wary of him, seems to have no intention of retreating. The gloomy eyes never left him. The sticky malice made him feel suffocated. Xiao Xiao is now facing difficulties riding a tiger. He has no means to deal with monsters. Nowadays, he doesn't have any useful tools around him. What should we do? What should we do? Drops of sweat flowed down Xiao Xiao's cheeks. The monster seemed to be a bit impatient, pacing back and forth on the branch, but its gaze did not shift away from Xiao Xiao's surroundings. In the quiet night, the howling of the monster night owl permeates to the extreme. The crimson eyes were so thick that they seemed to be dripping with bright red blood. The faint phosphorescence flickered, against the pale moonlight, adding a touch of fear. Xiao Xiao's brain was running rapidly, even experiencing waves of pain due to overload. Damn it! There's still nothing I can do. All he can do now is to procrastinate as much as possible. It's strange for heroes to save beauty and save him. Indeed, this hero is not so easy to do. Chapter 8. Ear Mouse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Why are the golden fingers of the heroes in other people's novels so awesome? He is such a chicken. Don't be so biased, my goodness. At least give him some ability to save his life. Since he has seen this world full of demons and monsters, and since they have given him a stepping stone into it. So why not just give some protection to walk through it casually? Can we only hope that his body's self-healing ability can withstand this time? To be honest, being beaten passively is not his style. Thinking of his body's self-healing ability, he suddenly remembered the black notebook that he had neglected. That notebook with only 2 monster designs so far. Being in a small forest, even in such an explosive scene. Xiao Xiao inexplicably remembered the memory of seeing another monster here before. That monster is so much better than the one in front of me. His eyes were filled with golden light, and the black notebook slowly emerged before his eyes. The pages of the book were rustling and eventually stopped on one page. Ear Rat. Xiao Xiao looked at the figure outlined by the bright red cinnabar on the yellowed paper page, so vivid and vivid. Suddenly, he seemed to see the arrogant monster turning its head. The animal's erect pupils flickered with crimson light, its gaze like a sword, showing its sharpness. Xiao Xiao instinctively closed his eyes. When Xiao Xiao opened his eyes again, he suddenly became confused. What's in front of him is ear rats. A small body, limbs gripping the ground, head raised high, fearless in the face of a monster several times its size, with a thunderous voice rolling out of its throat, as if even the air was trembling. The monster on the branch shifted its gaze away from Xiao Xiao for the first time. The bee emitted a piercing scream, flapping its wings, and the cold light of the needle at the end appeared, emitting a bloodthirsty light. 2 monsters, one big and one small, were deadlocked without giving in to each other. Xiao Xiao, who had escaped from the center of the storm, finally took a brief breath, blinked his sour eyes, and looked at the battlefield as inconspicuously as possible. The sudden appearance of the ear mouse was undoubtedly a great good thing for Xiao Xiao, not to mention that it still seemed to be on his side. The tense situation left Xiao Xiao with no spare time to think too much. He was just worried that he wouldn't know if this ear rat could beat that bee. The difference in body shape is quite significant. Xiao Xiao was very worried. But he is powerless, and now he is not sure if it is because of him that the ear mouse is against the bee. If the ear mouse turns around to deal with him again, then it will be a lot of fun. The best outcome, of course, is that these 2 monsters are both defeated. After all, he had a few encounters with the ear mouse, and this monster had not hurt him much either. The library incident was not taken into account, and it did not harm the girl who accidentally saw it. So, this monster should be a friendly monster to humans, right? If that's the case, he naturally hopes that this monster will win. Xiao Xiao, who was released from the urgent gaze of the monster, realized that the small tree forest was eerie at this moment, as if even the air was frozen. The surrounding trees are in a state of decay. The yellowed and withered branches and leaves exude a decaying aura. The pale moonlight was even more lifeless, swaying in a strange and eerie manner. The ear mouse's silver-gray hair was shining brightly, as if it was about to burn. 2 pairs of crimson eyes collided. A pair of round pupils filled with lifelessness and malice. A pair of erect pupils with a ferocious arrogance and cruelty. The monster on the tree swooped down, blowing a sharp, knife-like drama wind. The sound of whoosh swept over, and the sharp silver needle shone brightly with a bright red light in an instant. The ear mouse showed no fear at all, as if it was engulfed in a towering silver flame. Its small body avoided the tail needle of the bee, and its huge fluffy tail swung fiercely towards it. Xiao Xiao looked at the two that were still deadlocked the previous moment, and the next moment they fought together at a speed that was beyond human eyes. Bang, kang, boom boom, falling leaves fly, trees fall to the ground, creating a sense of earth shaking and mountains shaking. Xiao Xiao remained stiff in place, afraid of accidentally breaking into the range of two monsters fighting. He tried hard to open his eyes wide, the monsters struggle, but unfortunately tears were about to come out, and still could only see a vague shadow. Xiao Xiao did not give up and followed the shadow's movements to the death. In his eyes, a golden light gradually emerged, like a flexible fish, circling around its pupils before disappearing, only a shallow afterglow seeping out. Xiao Xiao felt that his gaze suddenly became clearer. He didn't care about surprise. Just happily dedicating all my heart and soul to the monster ahead. Although the ear mouse is small, it has lived up to its usual appearance of dragging around 2, 5, or 8,000 yuan, facing the bee head.On and not falling behind at all. Even due to its overly agile posture, it can swing a big tail of the opponent every time it avoids the tail needle attack. The tail of the ear rat looks both fluffy and soft, but it is truly a great weapon, capable of breaking stones and wood without hesitation. Not to mention that this tail can be big or small, long or short, making it difficult for people, demons to defend against. This also makes the wings of bees no longer an absolute advantage. Shushu, the aggressive tail emitted a piercing explosive sound, attacking the bee, that flickered and moved in the air with a destructive and evasive momentum. The angle was not sharp, and the changes were not flexible. It was both powerful and agile, like a bug-like tail. Xiao Xiao sighed sincerely. So, it's not right to use appearance to attract demons. Now it seems that ear rats have a greater chance of winning. Sigh, the ear mouse's tail suddenly turned and struck in unison. The bee couldn't dodge and let out a sharp and piercing scream. The pain was filled with deep resentment and madness, and the huge sound waves spread out. The air was filled with intense ripples, spreading and advancing layer by layer. Wherever it passed, the tree trunk broke and the branches and leaves shattered. Xiao Xiao couldn't dodge and his brain felt as if it had been hit hard by a giant hammer. A sharp pain swept through him, as if a saw was cutting and stirring in his brain. Xiao Xiao spun around in circles, almost unable to stand steadily. He stumbled and supported a tree on one side, searching for the Qinyuan website www.zhaoxiuyuan.com. With his other hand, he fiercely pounded his headache-stricken head. Pain, it hurt so much. Xiao Xiao's forehead had bulging veins, his teeth clenched tightly, and he gasped for breath like a dehydrated fish, seemingly trying to relieve the intense pain in his brain, but to no avail. His throat felt a burning dryness. Xiao Xiao was so painful that he almost wanted to roll on the ground. Ha! His dry, hoarse and astringent breath continued to escape from his throat. At this moment, he could no longer care about the two monsters that had fought until the sky and earth were dark. If this pain continues, there's no need for monsters to do anything. He's going to die. However, Xiao Xiao's fingers were tightly pressed into the trees, and blood oozed out. What are you joking about? How could he be defeated by a mere headache? If he perseveres, he doesn't believe that this has no timeliness. Just hold on, as long as you hold on for this period of time. Xiao Xiao bit his lips tightly, and a fishy smell spread in his mouth. Between the drooping eyebrows and eyes, at some point, a golden light flowed around the eyes, becoming even more intense. The pain in the brain is weakening. Xiao Xiao slid down the tree trunk and sat down, with sweat beads hanging on his eyelashes reflecting a golden glow. He was unaware and grateful for the end of the nightmare. Xiao Xiao felt his whole body sore and weak, as if he had been squeezed dry, with no more strength. He hung his head, his chest trembling violently, and there was a smell of blood and rust in his throat and mouth, with a sweet and greasy taste that made him even more thirsty. He pursed his lips, and a sharp pain hit, which was the area he had bitten before. My lips are also peeling and dry. It's really embarrassing, but the feeling of surviving the disaster is also too good. Ha! His dry and hoarse voice was intermittent, rough and unpleasant, but it couldn't conceal the joy in it. End of Chapter 9. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Suddenly sensing something, Xiao Xiao looked up. The silver-gray monster landed silently, its high head exuding an innate arrogance. Even though it was all disheveled, it still pulled quite awkwardly. Xiao Xiao felt a bit amused, but also a bit wary. I was blinded by the monster battle I saw for the first time before, and then I was tormented by pain. Before I could recover my strength, the ear rat appeared in front of him with such a big roar. Is this finished? Xiao Xiao's slightly relaxed body tightened again just now, and the corner of his eye swept aside, without seeing the figure of the bee. Is this an escape? Or was it eaten? Xiao Xiao looked at the abdomen of the ear mouse with a slightly strange expression, as if it had not changed much from before. Ah! Xiao Xiao was so excited that a strong wind whistled past his ear like a sharp arrow. This was the sound piercing through the trunk of the tree. Xiao Xiao withdrew his somewhat presumptuous gaze. Isn't this what is often written in books about how monsters eating monsters can enhance their abilities? At this moment, he really hoped that this monster would eat monsters, so that it wouldn't eat people. Even though he was completely powerless, the nerves in his brain kept clamoring for danger. With such a strong sense of crisis, Xiao Xiao tightly clasped his hands on the ground, leaned forward slightly, and stared at the approaching ear mouse without giving in. However, the ear mouse ultimately stopped 3 steps away. Not 1 step closer. Scarlet eyes seemed to still retain the ferocity of the previous fight, but looking at him at this moment, there was clearly a hint of scrutiny and contempt. Although I know the other person is a monster and cannot be judged by reason, the appearance of such a humanized expression on a rabbit-like face is truly indescribable. And, is this monster looking down on him? Is that right? Yeah. Xiao Xiao didn't know what expression to put on anymore. The previous earth-shattering moment is now silent. The moonlight is like frost, shedding a hint of paleness and giving off a hint of Qinyuan. The silver-gray hair of the ear mouse, like high-quality silk, flows with a sparkling and clear glow. It looks so soft. However, Xiao Xiao was well aware of its hardness. The previous one with 1 tail at a time was quite exhilarating. Has it disappeared? Just like the inexplicable moment when I came, I left silently. Just like that, in front of him. Disappeared. Xiao Xiao softened his spine and let out a heavy breath, which was particularly clear in the quiet forest. Is this finally over? That's really great. Xiao Xiao was about to cry. If we keep tinkering, he really needs to explain it here. Is it unjust or not? Third brother. Zhao Levsing shouted loudly. Previously, after searching for his direction with the boss and a few others without finding anything, he gradually gathered together and approached Xiao Xiao. Along the way, he found a fainting girl and finally decided that the boss would send the girl to the school hospital. The second brother would return and inform the other girls that they had been found, while he came to find the third brother. Yo! Xiao Xiao originally wanted to stand up, but he was really powerless. He could only try to put on a calm expression and greet him naturally. However, his sweat-soaked forehead, pale face, and tired expression between his eyebrows and eyes all clearly exposed his weakness. At first, Zhao Luzhing was far away, and with the dim light in the small forest, he didn't notice anything wrong. He even joked, "You're still okay." Third brother, do you know we've already found someone? Or is it so fast that it won't work? Xiao Xiao leaned against a big tree, his lower body was caged under the moonlight, and his upper body was hidden in the darkness. Branches crisscrossed his head, scattered with withered leaves. The moonlight was desolate, casting a mottled black shadow, which also had some artistic conception. When Zhao Luzheng walked in and wanted to joke a few more words, he suddenly stopped. Under the clear moonlight, Xiao Xiao's face became even paler and worse, with a faint hint of blue. He couldn't help but be shocked and say, "Third brother, what's wrong with you?" "Cough, it's okay." Xiao Xiao rubbed his nose and smiled helplessly. "It's just that he's a bit weak. Can you help me with it? Is it okay?" Zhao LV quickly stepped forward and helped Xiao Xiao up. "How did it get like this? Let's go to the school hospital as soon as possible, maybe we can still run into Big Brother." "Third brother, are you really okay? What's going on?" Third brother, did you run into evil spirits?" Faced with Zhao Luzheng's endless questions, Xiao Xiao's throat was dry and he couldn't make much sound. He didn't know how to answer for a moment, so he was just as quiet as gold. Tonight, he was exhausted and had no energy to say anything more. What he wants to do most now is to throw himself onto the soft bed and have a good sleep. Everything else, will wait until he wakes up. The next afternoon, Xiao Xiao woke up. At that time, he was the only one left in the dormitory and had just woken up, feeling a bit confused. Suddenly, a sound of opening the door rang out, followed by the leader's loud voice. "Third, you finally woke up. Why, are you okay? Is there anything uncomfortable?" "Xiao Xiao, I'm really worried about you," Zhuge Yun said nauseously, pretending to climb onto Xiao Xiao's bed and give him a loving hug. He was eventually grabbed by the boss at the back collar, preventing his scheme from succeeding. Zhaoxuan.com Everyone unanimously gave Zhuge Yun a white eye. "Third brother, are you hungry?" "We brought you food," Zhao Luzheng said constructively. Xiao Xiao is really hungry. He missed breakfast and lunch. How could he not be hungry? Quickly performing a quick wash, Xiao Xiao asked about the follow-up of last night's incident while eating. "There's nothing particularly special about it. The girl who entered the small forest was fine, so he naturally knew. But he eventually went late. That girl, like the first few, although she didn't have any injuries, was seriously frightened, talking incessantly, and was still recuperating in the school hospital." Speaking of this, Xiao Xiao had some doubts. Judging from yesterday, that beat really meant to hurt people. Since that was the case, how could besides one of the victims who was particularly unlucky and seriously injured, and excluding the one he saved yesterday, the others were only frightened? Although I was a bit scared. Xiao Xiao is a bit puzzled. "Forget it, anyway, it's all over now, don't worry about so much." Quickly, Xiao Xiao happily set aside his doubts. As for the weak inquiries from his roommates about him yesterday, they were also fooled away by his jokes. However, he still cared about one thing and casually asked, was there anything unusual when they were looking for someone last night? After all, those two monsters fought so fiercely yesterday, they should have heard some movement, right? Or can you also see something? However, it is obvious that the boss and his team did not notice any abnormalities, nor did they take those movements too seriously. They only thought they were the aftermath of thunder or earthquakes. Xiao Xiao didn't say much about this, feeling relieved or something else in his heart. Chapter 10. Qinyuan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xiao Xiao dug out the black notebook from the drawer, and at that moment, he was the only one in the dormitory. The black cover has a unique texture, like gold, jade, or ancient sandalwood, with a thick and old charm. It vaguely shows repeated and eerie patterns, with a faint silver light shining through it. A hint of blood seeps out of the silver light, seemingly indicating something unknown. Xiao Xiao rubbed the cover for a while. The slightly cool touch precipitated his somewhat chaotic heartbeat. Xiao Xiao slowly opened his notebook, and the red cinnabar of the fish was bright and agile, with a faint cluck sound. The innocent and childish tone inexplicably made people's spine shiver. And its overly cunning eyes inevitably make people feel uneasy. What is this? When Xiao Xiao flipped to the ear mouse on the second page, he couldn't help but freeze. Compared to the bright color of the zebrafish, the ear rat appears as if covered in a layer of gray, dull and lifeless, like a clumsy and outdated painting. What's going on? Last time I watched it, the ear mouse was like a fish, and the bright red cinnabar flowed like paper, lifelike. But now, while the silver carp is as it is, the ear mouse has undergone such changes. Is it? Was it because the ear rat suddenly appeared in front of him that night that caused it? Although there is no conclusive evidence, Xiao Xiao believes that this speculation is highly accurate. I don't know if it will recover, will it? How long will it take to recover? Xiao Xiao lightly touched the ear mouse on the paper with his fingers and murmured to himself. That night, the appearance of the ear rat undoubtedly saved his life. He was naturally very grateful, so he was particularly unwilling to let his life-saving benefactor suffer any harm as a result. But why did it happen? Why would you save him? Why does this make one's own pattern darker? There are many problems, and Xiao Xiao also has some speculations. However, everything still needs to be verified. Xiao Xiao was lost in thought for a while, and then opened the third page with some caution. The yellowed paper was blank, but Xiao Xiao was not disappointed and still stared intently. There seemed to be a strange fluctuation in the air that flashed by, as fast as an illusion. Coming out. Xiao Xiao's eyes widened, and a golden light emerged from the depths of his pupils. On the yellowed paper, there is vermilion oozing out, as if outlined with a plain pen. The pen tip is light and heavy, with appropriate intensity. Soon, the B of that night appeared on the previously empty paper. The familiar crimson round pupils seemed to be filled with blood, emitting a sweet and decaying scent, filled with overflowing malice and lethargy, instantly dragging him into the memories of that night. It's really an unpleasant memory. Xiao Xiao quickly regained his senses and shook his head. He was indeed an unpleasant monster. The name of the monster also emerged, with its ancient and eerie lines outlining an unusual aura. Qinyuan. Xiao Xiao whispered out the name of the monster. Well, this name sounds much taller than fish and rats. Xiao Xiao touched his chin. However, waste. Xiao Xiao came to the conclusion succinctly, you're wasting such a good name. Xiao Xiao still remembers the suffocating stench of those few desires. For such a monster with a strong body odor, he, who has a bit of a cleanliness fetish, naturally won't have any favorable feelings. Moreover, he almost died under the sharp tail needle of that monster. Oh, by the way, and the scream that made him want to die, this monster really has no shining point from head to toe. However, this kind of monster standing on the enemy's side is indeed a headache. What if it's our own? Xiao Xiao smiled somewhat ill-intentioned. Now, there are only 3 types of monsters on the black notebook. Fish, ear rats, and Qinyuan. I don't know what the abilities of the silver carp are. How about giving it a try next time in a place with water? Also, since the goblin is a monster, it is naturally different from ordinary fish. Perhaps it can also survive on land. A battle of monsters ended quietly. Xiao Xiao suddenly realized that in many places, even if no one saw it, there were still many battles between monsters taking place. Inexplicably, Xiao Xiao became somewhat excited. He had never realized so clearly that the world in his eyes had undergone tremendous changes. A more magnificent and grand world was unfolding its embrace towards him, lifting its mysterious veil and allowing him to explore the truth. This is a world of people and demons. And how fortunate he was to be able to wander between 2 worlds. Even if it requires some courage. Because danger is everywhere, isn't it? After a few days, no similar incident occurred in the small forest again, and the previous victims couldn't say anything about their experiences. Therefore, this case, known as the small forest incident, on the campus website, came to an end and was sealed in a file bag. Fortunately, the girl who was most severely injured was rescued and saved from life-threatening danger. After a period of uproar, this incident was forgotten because there were no new victims, and the grove once again became a popular dating destination for couples. Third, let's get together this Friday night. Friendship. Xiao Xiao raised his eyebrows in surprise. Finally, which girl's dormitory did the boss successfully connect with? Actually, it was the girls from Qinyuan who wanted to thank us last time and invited us to have a meal in our entire dormitory at Qinyuan. www.xiaoxiuan.com, Zhao Luzheng explained straightforwardly. Oh my, what's the matter? This is opportunity. Zhuge Yun waved his hand with great enthusiasm and then showed a slightly lewd smile. The girls in that dormitory are still pretty. Hee hee. The boss smiled at Zhuge Yun with some agreement. By the way, third brother, the girl you saw right before is also there. Fate, third. Even the youngest child started frowning and making eyes at Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao couldn't help but twitch his brows and eyes, and he naturally knew who they were talking about. To be honest, when he saw that girl that day, he was also surprised to find out that it was the girl who had seen the ear mouse. It has to be said that no coincidence can make a book. Xiao Xiao felt a bit emotional. I don't know if that girl ever saw an ear mouse again later. On Friday night, after a lot of fuss in the entire dormitory, they finally packed up and went to the appointment like dogs. Zhuge Yun even sprayed perfume, and was laughed at by the boss who always boasted himself as a real man. At the meeting place, the boys couldn't help but be shocked to find that the girls had already arrived. Oh no, they arrived even later than the girls. It's not a good start. Sorry, we're late. The boss was very proactive in admitting his mistake and tried his best to save the impression. No, you're still early, we came earlier. After all, how can we make life-saving benefactors wait? The girls have cute and charming smiles.